Hello, thanks for joining me. As you can see, I'm in the workshop, and today I want to talk about battery optimizers or battery tenders, the kind of battery chargers that you leave connected to your battery and it maintains and looks after your battery. The reason I'm talking about this is just coincidentally, over the last 2 weeks, I've had 3 separate conversations with friends who, for various reasons, which I'll explain in a minute, were wanting to buy a battery optimizer, and they were looking specifically at the Optimate brand, and they were really confused over which one they should buy. If you have a look on the Optimate website, I think I haven't counted them, but they make over 20 different models of battery optimizer, and some of them are extremely expensive. The temptation is to think, oh, well, if I buy a more expensive one, then I'm getting more features, I'm getting a better battery optimizer. And of course, that is true. But do you really need to spend all of that money? Do you really need all of those features? And the answer is, in most cases, no, you don't. You'll be fine with one of the cheaper ones. So I've been using battery optimizers for many, many years. I'm very keen on Optimate, the brand Optimate. I have, I think, 4 Optimates at the moment. I do have other brands as well. And over the years, I've used other brands. But I'll talk specifically about the Optimates because I think they're a very well established and a good quality brand. So I'll go through the different models and explain what they do. And then from that, you can decide whether you need those features or not. And then I will make my recommendations based upon my own experience of using them for many years as to which ones I think you should consider. And I have an eye there particularly on not spending more money than you need to, because you can spend a lot of money on these. But before I go into that, I'll just tell you a quick story about the use of battery optimizers. I started using them back in the early days well, firstly, to my knowledge, when they first became available, on my Harley Davidsons, because I found with my Harley Davidsons, unless I kept the battery in tip-top condition, it really struggled to turn the engine over. And so with every Harley that I've owned, I've had an Optimate or another brand, an Accumate or something like that, charging the bike. Just one of the really basic ones. Now, if you follow the channel, you know that I have a Harley Davidson Fat Bob, Dyna Fat Bob, which is 2008. So I've had that, 17 years, that bike. And that has a built-in alarm and immobilizer, which means when you park it up, there's a drain on the battery from the alarm and the immobilizer. So that bike, when it's not being ridden, just lives on the Optimate. I park it up in the garage, and before I walk away from the bike, I immediately plug the Optimate in, and I only unplug it immediately before using the bike. A lot of people mistakenly think that you have to disconnect them periodically. You don't. You can just plug it in and leave it plugged in. Anyway, I had to get a new battery last year, so 2024, last year, I had to get a new battery. And it's the first time since buying the bike I had to get a new battery. And when I took the old battery out, it was actually date stamped, was the battery, April 2008. So that battery had lasted 16 years. And I'm convinced that the reason that it had lasted so long was because I keep it on the Optimate all the time, which keeps it in tip-top condition. So I really do feel that they are a good long-term investment, saving you in battery costs, as well as the frustration of, coming out to use your bike and finding that, it won't start. Okay, so let's have a look at the different options available and what kind of features they have.
For those who've never actually used a battery optimizer, perhaps I should start by explaining what they are. It's essentially a battery charger, but it's got sophisticated electronics within it, which allow you to leave it connected to the bike's battery when your bike's parked up, and it will maximize the battery's performance, its lifespan, and its efficiency. So when you plug it in, it analyzes what kind of state your battery is in, and then it will apply appropriate type of charge, either quite a strong charge or a gentle charge, pulse charge, whatever's appropriate according to the condition of the battery. And once it's got the battery fully charged, then it maintains it by watching the battery and periodically giving it a bit more charge to top it up, so that when you come to use the bike again, you can be confident that your battery is in tip-top condition and your bike will start with no problem. Optimate categorise their battery optimizers into three main categories. Bronze, which have the basic charging capabilities. Silver, then which have smarter automatic charging facilities with more features on them. And then gold, which are advanced. Their features are more selectable and they have more even more features on there. And then they have some specialist categories. Lithium, which are designed specifically for lithium batteries, although I will explain later that the standard chargers will charge lithium batteries as well. They then have the off-grid category, which is very useful for bikers who have a garage with no power to it. And I'll talk about those because I've got a couple of friends who use these very successfully. And then the final category is the professional. And these are optimizers which have more tools on them, a lot of diagnostic tools, things like that. And they're really designed for motorcycle or motor workshops rather than just for keeping your bike on at home in the garage. The most basic charger which Optimate offer is the Optimate 1 Duo. And even though this is the basic model, it's still very sophisticated. And I would suggest that for a lot of people, you will need nothing more expensive than this model. I use a lot of these, so I'll explain later in more detail what I use in the workshop, but I have several of these and they are absolutely fantastic. So it's called the Duo because it will charge both standard batteries and lithium batteries. Within standard, that includes the lead acid batteries, it includes gel batteries, and it includes the sealed batteries as well. So essentially, every form of motorcycle battery it will manage. And you can probably see from the diagram on the front of the charger here, it has quite a sophisticated 4-step charging and management system. So I'll just talk you through this because then that is relevant to the later, more sophisticated models as well. So the first thing it does is it analyzes how much charge that the battery currently has, and if the battery is very low, and that's to say if it's between 4 volts, it's dropped down to between 4 volts and 8.8 volts, which is pretty low, then it will put in a limited current so that the battery gently recovers until it gets to a higher state. And once it gets to 8.8 volts, it will then increase the charge to a higher level, and it will produce a faster charge. So that is a way of protecting the battery rather than just hitting it with a very heavy charge from a poor state. It will manage that carefully. So step 2 then is if the battery is above 8.8 volts, so it's just down a little bit, it's not too bad, then it will bulk charge and it will hit it with quite a reasonable current. In this case, with this model, it's 0.6 of an amp to bring the battery up to full voltage. Then step 3, it will then verify the battery to make sure that it is fully charged and it will hold that charge. So it runs that program for 30 minutes, and if the battery requires further charging, it will revert back to the step 2, the bulk charging sequence, and it will sometimes it will deliver a sort of variable current pulse to the battery, which helps bring it back up to full charge if it's if the battery's a bit under par. And then the 4th step, the final step, is the retention test. So it doesn't put a charge through the battery, it just watches the battery for 30 minutes or until the battery drops below 13.3 volts, and it will put a floating charge then through the battery, a maintenance charge periodically to try and keep that battery topped up. So it's not just a simple battery charger, it is actually quite complex in what it does. So that's the basic model. All of the subsequent models build on what this one does. So it's only worth buying one of the more expensive models if you require the additional features over and above what this one does. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I have one of these basic chargers on my Harley Davidson, and the last battery lasted for 16 years on one of these. So they work very, very well. The next model up offered by Optimate is the Optimate 2 Duo. This offers all of the same features as the Optimate 1. The only significant difference here is that it is capable of delivering a much greater charge, whereas the Optimate 1 offers a charge of 0.6 of an amp. The Optimate 2 can offer 2 amps of charge. So that will obviously then charge a battery much faster, and it's more suitable for larger batteries as well. Most batteries on motorcycles really don't need that kind of level of charge, but if you do have a bigger battery, or if you're intending on using the Optimate for other things as well, and particularly for something like a car as well, then it might be useful to have that extra oomph, that extra power from the Optimate 2. But it is significantly more expensive than the Optimate 1, it doesn't actually do anything more that the Optimate 1 can't do. So I would only recommend you getting an Optimate 2 if you have a particularly large battery on your bike, or you're wanting to use it to charge larger batteries off other things as well. The next model in the range is the Optimate 3. The Optimate 1 and 2 are in the bronze range, which means the basic chargers. The Optimate 3 is where the silver range starts. So this is where we start seeing additional features. And so if these additional features will be useful to you, then this is probably worth looking at. The significant difference here with the Optimate 3 is that it will diagnose and try and save damaged batteries. So it will diagnose if a battery is heavily sulfated, and it will try and recover it. The 1 and 2, I said, will only deal with a battery that dropped down to 4 volts, whereas the 3 will try and save a battery even if it's dropped down to only 2 volts. This model is totally automatic, so you simply attach it to your battery, switch it on, and doesn't matter what kind of state your battery is in, it will try and sort it out. Some of the more advanced models aren't fully automatic like this, and so this is an attractive feature of the Optimate 3, the fact that it is fully automatic. On their website, Optimate say that this is the most popular charger for motorcyclists. However, you should note that the Optimate 3 is for lead acid batteries only. It won't charge and maintain lithium batteries. I would say it's worth getting if you're happy to spend the extra money. But if you have a bike with a healthy battery that you use and you're just storing it for a time over winter, or you want to put it on the optimiser whilst you're not using it, your battery is fine, then you don't really need these features. You may consider that it's worth having these features just in case. So that's the Optimate 3. And so we move on to the next model, which is the Optimate 4. There's a couple of different variations of this one, but with the Optimate 4, we're moving into the gold range. So we've got even more features here, and this is now a very sophisticated bit of kit. I have an Optimate 4, and it's excellent. So it offers all of the facilities of the earlier models. The battery recovery is even better on this model, even more sophisticated, so it can and I have actually successfully revived batteries that are totally dead with this, so it's got a lot more capability of reviving heavily discharged and sulfated batteries. But another feature which is very important with this charger is that it will deal with the CAN bus systems on BMWs and Triumphs. So I first bought one of these when I had a BMW GS 1200, because you can plug the charger into the DIN socket on the bike's dash and run the charger through that, which is obviously then running through the CAN bus system. It will also switch to the Triumph CAN bus system as well. So if you own either a Triumph or a BMW and you want the convenience of being able to plug in the Optimate just straight into the DIN plug, but basically the cigarette lighter style plug, then there is a facility on this charger to switch it into that mode so it work. I have to confess that I ended up not using this on the BMW, and I don't use it on my Triumph. I just have the lead plugged in straight into the battery and use it in standard mode for a couple of reasons. One is I just found that was more consistent and reliable, but secondly, it's useful having that little lead off the battery, because once you've got an Optimate lead coming off the battery, you can adapt that to plug in other things such as a heated jacket, heated gloves, anything else that you want to power direct off the battery. So I do it that way. But these are additional features, and it is an excellent bit of kit, is the Optimate 4. The Optimate range goes on to the 5, 6 and 7, but honestly I don't think these are really optimizers that are aimed at motorcyclists. The Optimate 5 is a bit of a strange creature. It comes in two versions. The one you see in the picture here is the stop-start one. So this is designed for lead-acid batteries that, in cars, things like that, where you have that stop-start function. It's got good recovery. It's got a 6-step recovery program on it. It's not suitable for lithium batteries, this model. Because it's fairly basic in its features, this is actually classed as a bronze model by Optimate. There is a second version of the Optimate 5, which is selectable between 6 volts and 12 volts. It's classed as a silver model, is this one, I guess because of that additional feature, but it's still fairly basic. It's just aimed at lead acid batteries. I guess if you are running old British bikes on 6 volts, you might consider one of these, so you can switch it to manage 6 volt batteries. But I think for most bikers, this is not really. I admit I have got one, and I've got one so that I've got one charger that will do 6 volts. But I hardly ever use that 6 volt function, I have to say. Stepping up to the next model, we've got the Optimate 6, and this is really aimed at cars. Again, it will only deal with lead-acid batteries, not lithium batteries. When I talk about lead-acid batteries, that includes gel batteries, seal batteries, obviously. But the thing is with this one, it's aimed at much bigger batteries. It will give up to 6 amps of output, whereas remember the ones I mentioned earlier, the Optimate 1, 2 and 3, they have much lower levels of output because smaller motorcycle batteries don't need such a huge amount of current going through to charge them. It's a good charger, but really it's pretty expensive, and you don't need anything like this for a motorcycle. For completion, I'll briefly mention the Optimate 7. Not really relevant to motorcycles, designed for much bigger batteries, again focused on lead acid batteries only. Comes in 2 versions. One version will charge 24 volt batteries as well as 12 volt batteries. Very good chargers, very sophisticated, but very expensive and not at all what you need for a motorcycle. Optimate also make a range of lithium battery chargers. They're focused specifically at lithium batteries, but because the Optimate 1, 2, 3 and 4, which are more motorcycle focused, will deal with both lead acid and lithium batteries, then unless you have some kind of specialist battery which needs this specialist charger, you don't really need to go out and get this lithium battery charger. Again, just for completeness, I'll briefly mention the professional battery optimizers. These are really designed for workshops, professional use. So as well as all of the other features we've talked about, they've got features such as the ability to wake up new batteries that are shipped discharge. And there is a power supply mode on these as well. So you can use it to provide a constant power supply. If you've got a vehicle without a battery on it and you're doing some tuning or troubleshooting, diagnostic work, things like that. They're pretty expensive, so unless you're really flush and you want to splash out on something flash like this, really not necessarily for just looking after your bikes at home. Finally, I want to have a look at the off-grid battery optimizers which Optimate offer, because if you are a biker who keeps your bike in a garage with no power, which I know is the case for many people and a few of my friends are in that situation, then it can be very frustrating. So there's a couple of different options for you. The first of them is a battery-to-battery optimizer. This works just like the other battery optimizers, except that rather than plug it into the mains, you attach it to another 12-volt battery. So you can buy yourself a big battery, something like a leisure battery or a big car battery, put that in your garage with your bike, plug the optimizer into that, and then it will do all of the things which the other optimizers do. And then I guess periodically you would have to take that big battery into your house to top it up again. So it's a very good option if you have a garage without power. This will deal with both lead acid and lithium batteries, so it's a very good solution. And another option which Optimate offer if you have no power to your garage is a charger that runs off a solar panel. So if you're able to get a solar panel up on the roof of the garage or the door of the garage, somewhere like that, this is a very good option. Obviously, it will only charge during daylight hours when it's getting power to it, but it works in the same way, and it allows you to optimize your battery. I have a couple of friends that use these and they are excellent. They work very, very well.
Okay, so this has actually turned into quite a long video, but I hope you found it useful. If you're still with me, you're still following me. As with all the videos I make, I simply wanting to share useful information for other people, things that I think that they will find helpful. So if you have found this video helpful, you found it useful, please give it a like, consider subscribing to the channel, but above all, ride safe and see you again soon. Bye.